apparently she was so annoyed that she got her dad to buy the company, fire the entire board, replace it with his own people, just to have me fired. Oh, hi. Hello, and welcome to The Chip. Now, this bi-weekly podcast is about the many and varied schemes of the many and varied U.S. law enforcement and intelligence agencies, organizations, and committees, and how they are stupid and funny. Join us on our merry journey through space and, indeed, time. Hello, my name is Barry, and I once put an ad on Craigslist Los Angeles selling 30 barrels of crude oil but got no replies.
You might get some today.
Well, I took it down again, but that is a true thing I did.
Okay.
That's not the only. I went through a period of putting absolutely insane ads on Craigslist, and that was one of them, and I got no replies to that one.
That's fun. Hi, everybody. I'm Seamus, and you may know me as somebody that's trying to spread the joy, or what little joy we have during this complete
Ramadan,
end-stage dystopian capitalist Armageddon. Folks, just remember that plants are using us as they're farming us for oxygen and eventually food when we decompose. So think about that.
That's something I read in one of those Harari books.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he said their plants are farming us for oxygen and food.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is a way of looking at it.
Yeah.
That's not funny, though. That's just fucking creepy, and I don't like it.
Well, I was trying to bring this up, man. Well, you know, I'm sure the next 30 minutes or whatever is going to be totally...
Oh, yeah. This is a light one. This is a light one.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a light one. This is a lighthearted one. I hope you're all in the mood for a little jokey episode. This is about Cambodia.
Oh, fuck.
Okay. Now, Cambodia, I think, might be one of those places that's hard to find on a map if you're Western.
Oh.
So let's throw it up there. There we go. There's India. We all know where India is. It's the pointy bit pointing into the Pacific Ocean or whatever. And there is Cambodia between Vietnam and Thailand at the bottom right. You see it there?
Mm-hmm.
That is Cambodia. Now you can see how close it is to Vietnam. I wonder if that will cause problems in the 1950s. Yeah, it will. Cambodia, from around 800 to around 1400, the Khmer Empire ruled over a chunk of Southeast Asia, that whole chunk of land there, including modern-day Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, and chunks of Vietnam and China. These guys, the Khmer Empire now, are most well known for producing Angkor Wat, a Buddhist temple and the largest religious complex in the world. In the next photo, number 1 there. There you go. Isn't that beautiful?
Oh, yeah.
You'd never know by looking at it, would you? Sorry. A Buddhist temple and the largest religious complex in the world currently. After the empire broke up, the fortunes of the Khmer fell. Throughout the Middle Ages, the Khmer were, in the words of one historian, this is a quote, hunted incessantly and carried off as slaves by the Thai, the Vietnamese, and indeed other Cambodians. In 1863, when the history hots up, the French occupation of Cambodia began as part of the French colonial adventures in Southeast Asia in general, which they called Indochine, if you remember.
Fun.
Yeah. Cambodia was seen as the worst of the Southeast Asian colonies due to a lack of natural resources and difficult terrain. And initially, France could only extract wealth from it via taxes and rent. And over time, they managed to set up some cash crop plantations, mainly rice. And in the early 1900s, rubber plantations were used by the French car industry. Now, this is very interesting because, I say very interesting, utterly predictable. A lot of the times these guys going over to these places will say we're civilizing them. You know, we're on a civilizing mission, and we're also helping them extract their own natural resources and so on. None of that was happening in Cambodia. They weren't improving anything. They weren't even taking stuff out of the ground. It was just regarded as land that they just happened to have that they but they got rents from it.
So it was actually probably pretty good for the people there. I mean, comparatively then, right?
Yeah, but all they did there was charge rents and taxes.
Yeah.
So they had no justification whatsoever for doing anything with Cambodia. Not even their shitty imperial justifications would work with this place. Right. But then the rubber plantations kicked in, and I guess they could do their colonial mindset then. Yay. Around this time, Cambodian nationalism was taking off, as it tends to be when the slavery begins.
Yeah.
And Cambodian nationalism was taking off among the Khmer people, who resented not only French occupation, but the general favoritism shown to the Vietnamese in Cambodia over Cambodians. Now, this would be a consistent theme. I don't know. I lived in California, as you may know, as I mention every 12 seconds to everyone I know. And I lived with Vietnamese people for a while. And these people hated Cambodians. and
I
the
was unaware of that.
Vietnamese people. Well, you will find out why. Not
Okay.
for nothing, you know. Now we're going to talk about this section is called I called it Sihanouk. Sihanouk. There he is. Look at him there. That's Norodom Sihanouk. Okay. Yeah, he's an attractive gentleman. He's quite young now.
Hell yeah. Oh, what? Sorry. How young?
I would say above the age of majority.
Okay, I'm going to reserve the rest of the comments then.
No, he's about 19 there. You're safe.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's totally hot. He's fuckable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, too young for me, but Seamus, you go. When Germany set up Vichy France in 1940, French colonies everywhere became client states for France, meaning, Germany. In 1941, the king of Cambodia, Monivong, died, and his grandson, Norodom Sihanouk, became king. The same year, Japan occupied Cambodia as part of the global adventures of World War II. Now, normally, a kingdom would be handed down to the son, but the real power was with the French authorities, and they felt the young Sihanouk would be more pliable and open to French suggestions. Now, boy, were they wrong about that? This guy's made of fucking steel.
Nice.
You'll see now. And he doesn't get it all right, but he's this man is a giant of Cambodian politics. He may
I
be
bet he is.
Yes, he may be the most significant figure of Cambodian politics of all time, and I'm including Pol Pot in that.
Oh boy.
Yeah, Pol Pot had a run of it for a few years. This guy is amazing. He's a giant. In March 1945, Japan moved against France in Cambodia and took over, installing Sihanouk as prime minister of a new kingdom of Kampuchea under the beneficent guidance of the Japanese. Now, I don't want to ruin the ending, but Japan was on the losing side of World War II. Dude, you never know. I had a book. I have a book called The Peloponnesian War, right, which was fought in, let's say, 400 BC. And it was written by Thucydides, who was a guy at the time writing about it. It's a very interesting book about the Peloponnesian War. And in the review, I said Sparta wins. And somebody said, oh, I got suspended because I didn't tag it as a spoiler.
What the fuck?
400 BC.
That's insane.
Too soon, yeah? Too soon, you stupid bastards. I can't remember, was it Goodreads or one of those sites? Yeah, Japan lost. And in August 1945, the French got to reimposing their colonial administration, having learned nothing, apparently. Some heads rolled, most notably the foreign minister, Vietnamese-born Son Ngoc Tan, who served as prime minister from August 1945 to October 1945, when the French regained full control. Now, that guy's name will tell you he's Vietnamese, because it's Tan.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no... they're all Vietnamese, but they have the NH thing as a Vietnamese thing. Unfortunately for the French, from March to October, the Cambodians had a taste of freedom and independence, at least in theory. Sihanouk had to perform a delicate balancing act of negotiation with the French for independence while maneuvering around disparate bands of revolutionary freedom fighters, one of which was a group of anti-monarchists led by Son Ngoc Tan, our old friend, collectively known as Khmer Issarak, and the Viet Minh, who regarded Sihanouk as a French collaborator, not without reason, right?
Right.
Because he was collaborating with the French. I guess that's why they thought he was a French collaborator. But Sihanouk was always looking out for what the best course he thought for Cambodia was. Sihanouk proved beyond anyone's control and kept pushing hard for Cambodian independence. In 1953, he went to France for what he regarded as his last chance at Cambodian independence before the Khmer Issarak and Tan took over. Sihanouk left his father, the guy who probably should have been king all along, in charge in his absence, and Lieutenant Colonel Lon Nol was his liaison with the armed forces, right?
Okay.
Sihanouk pressed Lon Nol. It's different when I was typing it. I kept typing because my fingers are so used to it. My fingers kept typing lol, and I had to delete so often. His name is Lon Nol, Lon Gap Nol. That's his name, Lon Nol.
Okay.
That's his not Gap. Sorry, Gap is another Vietnamese name. That's nothing to do with this guy. I'm sorry. I meant a space between the names. Was his liaison with the armed forces. Sihanouk pressed the urgency of the matter on the French, who seemed unimpressed, but he was unwilling to return to Cambodia without some assurances. He decided to go on a world Cambodian independence tour, hitting up the US, Canada, and Japan, among other places. And if you remember about our Patrice Lumumba episode, he did the same thing.
Okay, yeah. Right.
Patrice went on a world Congo independence tour before it all kicked off, if you remember.
Yeah.
Something must have clicked somewhere, because in summer of 1953, France gave full independence to Laos, Vietnam, and Cambodia, probably as a result of the Paris Treaty, right? Or not treaty, the Paris talks. Sihanouk was finally able to return to a hero's welcome in Phnom Penh, which is the capital of Cambodia. In 1955, Cambodia had their first independent general election, and it was fought between three main parties. Now you're going to like this. Sangkum, a loose alliance party made of Sihanouk and Lon Nol's factions, It was broadly conservative, Buddhist, monarchist, obviously because he's the king, and Khmer nationalist. The second crowd was called the Democratic Party, which was ideologically Marxist and more or less aligned with Soviet Russia, and Praichechon, which was a more practical communist party, more or less aligned with China, which included Pol Pot amongst its members.
Hmm.
Pol Pot, Pol
Mhm.
Pot, Pol Pot, Pol Pot, Pol Pot. It's a holiday in Cambodia where you do what you're told. Now, the holiday in Cambodia where the slums got so much soul. No,
No.
Seamus,
No.
Seamus,
No. I'm good.
you know
I'm
what I'm
good.
doing. You recognize that?
No.
Okay, I'll give you a hint. Hang on. Here we go. Ding, ding,
Monty
ding.
Python?
No. California, Uber Alice. California, Uber Alice. Uber Alice. Please tell me, Seamus.
No.
California, Uber Alice, California. Do. The Dead Kennedys.
Ah, okay.
It's a holiday in
It's
Cambodia.
been a long time since I listened to Dead Kennedys.
Yeah.
So
There's a line in it about you're listening to ethnic jazz on a $5,000 stereo, you know? Fuck
Yeah.
off. Anyway, that's Pol Pot was in Praichechon at the time. There were 91 seats, and Sankum won every single one of them. Now, whenever you see a party win 100% of the seats in an election, something interesting is happening. Even traditional communist strongholds ended up voting for Sankum. So it seemed clear that massive electoral fraud had occurred. And Sihanouk almost admitted it during a later interview where he referred to some constituencies as communist strongholds himself. He used that word himself. And I guess he was trying to pretend to be surprised about the election that he sort of rigged.
right.
Right? Whenever you see that in an election, that's not democratic. It doesn't matter what else is happening. If 100% of the seats go to one party, no one's ever that popular, not in a democracy.
Right.
You can be that popular in a dictatorship or something, but this wasn't the case in Cambodia. Because in a dictatorship, you control all the media, so it is possible to be that popular in a dictatorship. In 1962, there was another general election. This time, only Sankum members were allowed to stand, so it should probably not come as a surprise that they again won all the seats. Nevertheless, Sihanouk was in charge now and officially adopted an aggressively neutral stance, something that would make life more and more difficult for him as the Vietnam War ploughed on and he bounced around in his diplomatic responses. Now, that's included for no reason. That's Eisenhower and Sihanouk having a talk in 1959. Now, throw us back up.
All right.
I couldn't find a way to get it into the podcast other than one day he met Eisenhower, and that's not really interesting, is it? Sihanouk had a very different understanding of neutrality than the Americans had. Sihanouk felt that neutrality meant he could really do whatever he wanted with any country he liked, and the Americans felt that it meant he was not allowed to do anything with anyone if he wasn't doing anything with America.
Right.
And that's often the interpretation of the word neutrality that the Americans have.
Correct.
So Sihanouk, usually countries learn after a while, but Sihanouk never learned. Some countries, if they say, okay, we're neutral, so we're going to talk to Soviet Russia about buying some nukes because we're neutral. The Americans are like, no, wait a minute, that's not what neutral. Neutral means you deal with us or nobody. So in 1965, Sihanouk broke diplomatic ties with the US, refused all their foreign aid, and turned to China for help. He was making a bet, quite reasonable at the time, by the way, that the Americans would fail in Vietnam and the Chinese would end up in control of all Southeast Asia.
Right.
Now, that's a smart play. It's a very intelligent play. Now, he was wrong, but sometimes you do a very intelligent thing and it doesn't work out. It doesn't make it not intelligent. That was smart. Backing China in that case in 1965.
Yeah.
That's quite early to realize the way the wind is blowing. He was smart. He just got it wrong. In 1966, they had another general election where only Sankum candidates were allowed to run. And this time, the Sankum party was sufficiently divided internally to provide an actual problem if it went a certain way. And this is often the way as well in communist countries. Because communist countries are generally one-party states. So they don't really have any choice but to develop factions within the party. And then the factions fight each other. And it's effectively like having more than one party, even though there's only one. To provide an actual problem if it went a certain way. And go a certain way it did, with 2/3 of the seats going to the conservative wing. And they elected Lon Nol, sorry, I even typed it here in my script, Lon Nol as their prime minister. Also that year, 1966, the pro-China Communist Party of Kampuchea reconstituted itself as the Communist Party, led by Pol Pot. Pol Pot, Pol Pot, it's a holiday in Cambodia. Don't forget to pack your wife. Nothing. Okay. As they were Khmer nationalists, Sihanouk half-jokingly called them the Khmer Rouge, right? The Red Khmer.
Right.
Khmer Rouge. the red kimmer, and it stuck. They started making civil war-y noises in the rural areas. In 1967, these simmering tensions broke out into a full-blown civil war, which was initially kicked off by rural protests over tax collections. Now remember, the Vietnam thing is happening right on the border constantly the whole time, and now this thing blows up into a civil war. By 1968, Sihanouk noticed that he was gaining very little from his alignment with China, and the Chinese seemed happy enough to let the civil war in Cambodia unfold if they weren't directly funding and resourcing the Khmer Rouge, which indeed they may have been. I'm not sure. I can't say for sure if they were or not, but it certainly looks that way. Further, it seemed clear that the US was going to bomb Vietnamese fighter bases in Cambodia, specifically to rattle the Viet Minh, regardless of how Sihanouk felt about it. He reopened diplomatic relations with the US and asked for help dealing with the Viet Minh bases in his territory, or as the Americans call them, the Viet Cong.
Right.
Yeah, Viet Minh, because they felt that the term Viet Minh sounded a bit weak and not strong enough, so they renamed the Viet Cong, which means nothing in Vietnamese. In March 1969, at a meeting held by Henry Kissinger, let's get it all out of your system.
That's all right. Go on.
Okay, it was agreed to bomb Cambodia. In 2000, which is pretty late in the day, right? In the year 2000, declassified documents revealed that US warplanes had already dropped 214 tons of bombs on Cambodia, but in American terms, that's not a lot.
Right.
214 tons of bombs is not a lot, as we will discover later on in the next page. But it sounds like a lot. If somebody dropped 214 tons of bombs on me, I would think it was a lot.
Right.
But Americans, it's nothing. They were regarded more as an unconnected, these 214 tons were regarded more as an unconnected series of tactical strikes rather than a bombing campaign. And now these Americans, of course, are splitting hairs, right?
Yeah.
In H.R. Haldeman's original notes, you remember that guy?
Oh, yeah.
The proper bombing campaign was called Operation Breakfast, but it became known as Operation Menu. It was kept secret for two reasons. Okay, this bombing campaign was kept secret for two reasons. First, it was unconstitutional, as Congress had not even been consulted. Thank God they don't do that anymore with bombing campaigns.
Right.
And second, it was assumed that the American public had no appetite for escalating the Vietnam War to another country, especially a neutral one. In 1969, maybe they were right. Turns out they were not, as we'll see. The very next day, the bombings began. Sihanouk made a public statement saying that these criminal attacks must immediately and definitely stop, which is of course ignored by Western media because the entire operation was secret. 2 days later, utterly aware of the situation, he made another statement to the press. I appeal to you to publicize abroad this very clear stand of Cambodia. That is, I will in any case oppose all bombings on Cambodian territory under whatever pretext. That seems pretty clear, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Now, of course, nobody could report it because it's a secret. In May of that year, eventually, the story broke in the New York Times and the game was up. Kissinger responded immediately by ordering J. Edgar Hoover to find the leak, telling him, we will destroy whoever did this, meaning who sent this story to the New York Times.
Right.
Hoover ended up, another returning champion of ours,
Yeah.
Hoover ended up illegally tapping the phones of 4 journalists. However, he needn't have bothered, because as it turned out, the American public didn't care what was going on in Cambodia.
Funny how that happens.
Well, they thought that the American public would balk at bombing a neutral country, and it turns out they didn't give a shit. They were
Right.
probably weary over Vietnam anyway.
Yeah.
This was not a particularly American problem, in fairness to the Americans. Over 2 years, Sihanouk protested the secret bombings at the United Nations over 100 times, but no one noticed or cared. Even the North Vietnamese, whose forces and supply lines were being bombed, made no complaint about Operation Menu, probably because they didn't want to admit to any cross-border incursions, of which there were many. In March 1970, a year later, the combined pressures of internal dissidents and Vietnam War-related business led to a coup, where Sihanouk was removed while he was in Beijing by his old friend and now aggressively pro-American Lon Nol, who had become increasingly frustrated with Cambodian tolerance of Vietnamese activities across the border. To underline this, the first actions of the coup were an attack on the North Vietnamese embassy in Phnom Penh. Nol took over immediately as prime minister and renamed Cambodia the Khmer Republic. Right, so there's our coup. We have coups every so often in this show,
Yep.
and that's the one here. The question of any regular viewer on our podcast will not be so much were the CIA involved as how involved were the CIA.
Right.
Unlike some operations, there is no definitive paper trail demonstrating a planned CIA coup. However, as with the dismissal in Australia, there was also no paper trail demonstrating that when we did the episode, if you remember. But documents declassified since our episode on the dismissal have demonstrated we were correct on that, right?
Yep.
Since we did that episode, some documents came out that said they were in fact planning this, and
Yeah. Not,
but
not even that it was the CIA, but also the
the
British
MI6, yeah,
governments and all that. Yeah.
yeah, correct. So we know that now. Instead of we just guessed it
Hmm.
in our based on the evidence we had, we just kind of pieced it together. But we know now. Um, but like that, we can piece together a likely scenario based on what we do know and what we do have paper trails for, most of which is related to the obvious strong motive and strategic interest related to the Vietnam War. Now, this is all was the CIA involved stuff. The US was already conducting a secret bombing campaign called Operation Menu and intelligence operations in Cambodia. They were also already supporting anti communist forces in Cambodia. CIA officers and US diplomats also maintained regular contact with Lon Nol and other anti communist Cambodian military figures, and the US Embassy was monitoring all anti Sihanouk political activity. There were also several attempts on Sihanouk's life. At least 3 parcel bombs were sent to his palace during the 60s, and one of them was traced to a US military base in Saigon. Further, in 1959, the CIA was under orders to organize a coup against Sihanouk because of his zero enthusiasm for Eisenhower's anti-communism. As far as we know, these orders never made it past committee level, but it is still a fact in the world. Removing Sihanouk would replace a leader who tolerated North Vietnamese troops on Cambodian soil with one who was violently opposed to them. In general, Sihanouk was seen as unreliable as he moved gently between left and right, depending on which most benefited Cambodia and his political position. A coup would enable the US to drop the mask and openly Ukraine up Cambodia to disrupt Viet Minh supply lines. Right? Finally, a fairly reliable indicator that the US had a hand in the coup is had a hand in any coup is how long it takes them to recognize a new government.
Yeah.
The U.S. and like with the Venezuela, the U.S. recognized the new Venezuelan administration before they
Yep.
took over Venezuela. So that's a sign that the Americans are
Yeah.
doing.
They did that a couple of years ago. Whenever they thought that they were going to
Yeah.
be able to oust him,
They
so yeah.
recognized the new government before the government was in
Yep.
place. Yeah. In fairness to the U.S. government in the 1970s, they waited until he took over before recognizing it.
A
The
little
U.S.
more
recognized,
patience.
but then they recognized it immediately. The U.S.
Yeah.
recognized Null's government immediately and moved instantly to support him, mostly by sending military aid, and all in the clear this time, in the open. So they had motive, means, and opportunity. But is there any evidence they actually planned anything? The ever-reliable Seymour Hersh reported that a naval intelligence officer told him that there was a plan to have a US-trained assassination team disguised as a Viet Cong, meaning the Viet Minh, a Viet Cong insurgents to kill Sihanouk and replace him with Lon Nol. Apparently Nol rejected the idea as criminal insanity. Even their
Wow.
coup guy said this is criminal insanity, right?
Wow.
It's like the guy, do you remember the guy in the episode we did on, what was it, in Guatemala, where their men, the CIA asset in the city said, I am not killing these people.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, that's stupid. Anyway, but Null agreed to US soldiers on the ground and US military support if his coup was successful. At the very least, it seems clear that Null felt assured of US support for any coup which did happen, and this is exactly what transpired. Sihanouk's options were narrowing, and he found himself allied to the Khmer Rouge he had previously mocked as the only people with an intelligence network and fighting force reliable enough to reinstate his government. And this turned out, as you will no doubt, everybody will be aware, this turned out to be a terrible mistake. And remember, 1970, we didn't know, nobody knew what was going on with the Khmer Rouge, right?
Sure.
And before this, they were regarded as figures of fun. They were kind of mocked, like the Zionists were in the 1930s. They were kind of seen as a crazy outlying, nobody could have predicted, right? And here we go. As soon as Lon Nol gained control of the now Khmer Republic, Operation Menu was axed and immediately replaced by Operation Patio, a panicky emergency stopgap bombing measure.
I don't know if these operation names are getting any better.
Oh, you're going to like the next one.
Okay.
Stopgap bombing measure before they could cobble together a better plan. This better plan was Operation Freedom Deal. Like that?
Of course.
Operation Freedom Deal, also run by Henry Kissinger, a far more comprehensive bombing campaign, because now they can do it in the open, right?
Yep.
Richard Nixon ordered the bombers to go in there, and I mean really go in. I want them to hit everything. Use the big planes, the small planes, everything they can. Kissinger set about arranging what Kissinger called a massive bombing campaign, anything that flies on anything that moves. Right?
It's an alpha male bullshit.
It's terrible.
It's like very much what we're doing now. The way they talk now.
Yeah, except they're not even trying now.
Yeah. It's
What did you say? Ultimate violence or something? He said.
Yeah, it's just that ultimate violence. It's that very sexual innuendo.
It seems sexual. Yeah.
Yeah. That's like, come on.
I mean, really go in.
Yeah.
Use the
Go.
big planes.
Yeah. We're going in. We're going in deep. Balls deep. I mean, deep,
Yeah.
deep, deep. Yeah.
I want to impregnate the uterus of Cambodia with the penis of American freedom. It is quite sexual, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not healthy to think like that. It's not
Uh,
mentally healthy. Um, whereas the ladies would, I don't know how would a lady do if she was invading. She'd probably use the circle of truth or something like Wonder Woman. Anyway, in the beginning, the B-52 bombers focused on Vietnamese positions, but inevitably there was something of a mission creep, and they ended up bombing Khmer Rouge positions to shore up Lon Nol's regime. Not that they were
oh,
particularly accurate. The bombers missed so many of their targets that Kissinger and Alexander Haig regularly falsified reports to their own State Department and
yeah.
others.
Yeah.
The US ambassador to Cambodia, Emery Swank, resigned in protest over this lack of transparency. Although I imagine if you're being
Uh,
assigned as the US ambassador to Cambodia in 1970, you probably know something's up before you've taken your post.
right.
In 1970, the Viet Minh started attacking Cambodian positions at the request of the Khmer Rouge. Their ranks were swelling with royalist supporters who had no idea they were fighting in a communist revolution. They thought they were fighting in a monarchist revolution. This happens sometimes when you have soldiers on the ground. They don't know what they're fighting for.
Right.
But they see somebody with a fighting force who's attacking the government, and they're like, yeah, me too. Me plus one. Right? In 1971, Admiral John McCain was running the United
As
States.
in, the other, that'd be senior, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Was running the United States Indo-Pacific Command and therefore technically in charge of the logistics. Kissinger must have seen the writing on the wall because even in 1971, he told one of McCain's men, don't think of victory, just keep it alive.
The most American thing ever.
He knew he wasn't going to win,
Yep.
and he said, listen, we're just going to blanket bombing just to what the Israelis call mowing the grass, just to keep
Yep.
them down.
Yep.
That is a quick look at the Civil War. The green areas are the Khmer Republic, and the light red areas are the Khmer Rouge, and the dark red are the Viet Minh. Right?
Very Rouge. I like that. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The green bits are, unfortunately, all the power centers, all the place where anything interesting happens in Cambodia. So while it looks like the red guys are winning, saying the red guys are in charge of a bunch of jungle doesn't mean much. But there's still definitely a conflict happening there, right?
Sure.
In 1972, the year after that map happened, Cambodia had another general election. This time, Lon Nol's party won 126 of the 126 seats in parliament. Now, what does that tell you? Right? What we discussed earlier. Apparently, the national mood of literally every single person in Cambodia did a complete 180 since the last election. Right? Now, remember, this is in the middle of a civil war. So the chances that everyone's going to be on the same page are very slim. In the middle of a civil war, guys.
Right.
126 of 126 seats went to Lon Nol. So that's how you do things in Cambodia. You have a general election and rig it. As the war dragged on, it became clear that the conflicts were more or less entirely based around securing supply lines and disrupting the supply lines of the enemies rather than doing any damage or killing people, which is the good news. The only forces doing any real damage or killing people were the US bombers. Everybody else, even the Khmer Rouge and the other guys' forces, Lon Nol's forces, were really more interested in securing supply lines. They weren't trying to hurt anybody or destroy anything. Also, as the Khmer Rouge evolved from a minor militia to an all-conquering army, they disassociated themselves from Sihanouk, who thought he could use them to return to power. In 1973, Sihanouk told a journalist that they will spit me out like a cherry stone.
Oh boy.
It turns out being spit out by the Khmer Rouge might be a point of pride, but I think he was hurt. In 1973, I think he found it hurtful, but later I suppose he'd be proud of it.
Yeah, that tracks.
Again in 1973, remember, nobody knew. It would not have been reasonable for anybody to predict what the fuck happened here.
Mm-hmm.
Even in 1973, and we're getting very close to apocalypse time. Operation Freedom Deal continued right up till the Case Church Amendment to government spending appropriations bills ordered that, and here's a quote, none of the funds herein, I've read this out before, none of the funds herein appropriated under this act may be expended to support directly or indirectly combat activities in or over Cambodia, Laos, North Vietnam or South Vietnam, or off the shores of Cambodia, Laos, North Vietnam and South Vietnam by United States forces, and after August 15, 1973, no other funds heretofore appropriated under any other act may be expended for such purpose. Now, you know why they had to word it like that?
Because it's pretty much like Iran-Contra, the same.
It's exactly like Iran-Contra.
Mm-hmm.
You have to word it like that because the CIA are a bunch of creepy fuckers, and they will jam a crowbar into the tiniest little chink gap in the armor. Okay. Kissinger lobbied hard to extend the deadline, but again, Watergate was occupying a lot of their time. Nevertheless, I don't know why I said again. I must have edited this funny. Watergate was occupying a lot of their time in 1973. Nevertheless, the comprehensive bombing continued right up until the 15th of August, which is kind of a fuck you. Because once you've passed a bill banning a bombing, you're telling everybody the bombing is wrong, and he still carried up right up until the morning of the bill. By this time, between 250,000 tons and 500,000 tons of bombs had been dropped on Cambodia. So now your 214
Yikes.
tons is looking a little bit more
Yeah.
all right, innit?
Mm-hmm.
This was more than was dropped on Japan during World War II.
Christ.
Towards the end of the campaign, the Americans had completely given up on bombing any Vietnamese positions and were solely dedicated to bombing areas controlled by the Khmer Rouge, who were seen as a function of the Viet Minh. And in a way, that's like not the worst. I mean, maybe a touch of that about the Khmer Rouge.
Isn't Anthony Bourdain have a famous quote about Kissinger and basically saying all you have to do is look at the kids in Cambodia?
Yeah.
So
it was no small irony that as operations in Vietnam were winding down, the seemingly corollary operations in Cambodia were winding up right up until August. In 1974, Congressman John Conyers filed a motion of impeachment against President Nixon specifically for the bombing of Cambodia. But as I said, these guys were busy with other things at the time, and it didn't go through.
Which is so much more reasonable than what they actually went after him for. And I'm not defending the Watergate thing. That's fucking bullshit too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean,
I think
these are the things you need to go after presidents for. This is what people should actually, be more concerned about than the fringe shit. You
mean war crimes?
Yeah, go after fucking war crimes.
Are much more serious than taking photos of the enemy's documents.
Yes. Yeah. But unfortunately, I'm not going to name names, but as one intellectual had pointed out, that pretty much every post-World War II president could be hanged at Nuremberg. So
I'm going to name his name.
Yeah, I'm sure you will.
I have a whole bit in here about Noam Chomsky.
Oh, I know you will.
And you should feel free to disagree with any of it or whatever you want, right? At the start of 1975, the Khmer Rouge, backed by China, launched an all-out offensive against the remaining parts of Cambodia not under their control. By April, it was clear that they were going to win. The Americans ordered an evacuation of their embassy staff, support staff, and all military units in Cambodia. This was called Operation Eagle Pull.
Fun.
Yeah, and involved the USS. Oh, you know, I love my unit names. It involved the USS Okinawa, carrying Heavy Marine Helicopter Squadron 462, comprising 14 CH-53 helicopters, 3 CH-46 helicopters, 4 AH-1J helicopters, and 2 UH-1E helicopters. Other ships involved were the battleships USS Vancouver, USS Thomaston, and the warships USS Edson, USS Henry B. Wilson, USS Knox, and the USS Kirk and the USS Cook. While not as panicky or messy as Operation Frequent Wind, which was the evacuation of Saigon, because the Khmer Rouge had no air support at all, it was still a massive and very embarrassing undertaking. A few days later, the Khmer Republic surrendered, and Cambodia, now called the Democratic Kampuchea, under the control of Pol Pot and the Communist Party of Kampuchea, whom Sihanouk had so dismissively referred to as the Khmer Rouge 10 years earlier. That is Pol Pot.
Yeah.
Feel free to dislike him intensely, because that will be the correct reaction as far as I am concerned. That is, I know it's small, but that is Pol Pot having a meeting with Mao Zedong.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a child, he was called Mao Zedong. I know they call him Mao Zedong. Pol Pot immediately set about moving towards his vision, which along with the rest of the Khmer Rouge leadership, he picked up while in university in France, of a self-sufficient agrarian socialist republic with no need for international trade or foreign aid, based on the policies of Mao Zedong, the guy in the photo there. To further this goal, the Khmer Rouge met with Chinese officials for advice and support, and several Politburo members regularly landed in Cambodia. At one of these meetings in Beijing, Mao told Pol Pot, and this is a quote, "We agree with you. Much of your experience is better than ours. China is not qualified to criticize you. We committed errors of the political routes for 10 times in 50 years. Some are national, some are local. Thus I say China has no qualification to criticize you, but to applaud you." Now I assume he's talking about the Great Leap Forward there that accidentally killed people, right? I don't know what he's talking about. But it's very rare for Mao to say we made a mistake, so I assume it was that. But he said we're not qualified to judge anybody, I guess. Pol Pot abolished money.
Interesting.
Yeah, he abolished private property, which is common in communist. He abolished religion, markets. Any meaningful kind of education and healthcare were banned.
See, that's okay. I was okay until those last two.
Communists tend not to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The entire social order, culture, and traditions were destroyed in one afternoon in what Pol Pot called Year Zero. All
I don't think I'm. I don't. So religion, I'm against banning. I just
Oh
don't
yeah,
want
yeah.
to. I just don't want it in my government. You know what I mean? That's my.
Oh, I wouldn't ban
Yeah.
religion either.
No, I wouldn't ban
No, it's not
religion.
the way forward
And
with
I
this.
say that as an atheist. So
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I wouldn't ban religion. You can't do that
uh,
to people. It's not right.
no.
Yeah, but he did, and he
Hmm.
banned. He didn't ban education and healthcare, but any kind of technological advances, any kind of modern education and healthcare was gone. So in a way, he kind of did. Any
Yeah.
meaningful kind of education and healthcare was banned. The entire social order was gone. All residents of Phnom Penh were ordered to leave and forced. The urban reality was just gone. Anything urban, destroyed. They were ordered to leave and forced to walk to the countryside with no organisation in place for accommodation, food, or healthcare. This evacuation alone killed over 100,000 people. The rest of the country was turned into a series of concentration camps and labour camps.
Mhm.
Anyone who was regarded as a possible threat to the communist project was executed. This included anyone with any connections to foreign governments, monks, ethnic minorities such as Vietnamese, Thai, and Chinese people, whose mere existence was banned by law, intellectuals, such as anyone who spoke multiple languages or wore glasses,
Oh Jesus.
any professionals, such as business leaders, journalists, doctors, and lawyers. Executed. All those people were executed. Now, I don't know what it says for a country that executes all its journalists, doctors, and lawyers, but nothing good. That is an exhibit in one of the museums they have I'll be talking about later, but I said I'll show it to you now. Perhaps the most notorious prison was S21 in Phnom Penh. Thousands of prisoners were detained there, brutally interrogated, tortured, and eventually executed in one of the many killing fields, as they called them. As in every other prison, confessions extracted under torture often implicated others, fueling a cycle of arrests and executions. As most of the victims were the same ethnic background as the murderers, there have been some discussions about whether this can or cannot properly be called a genocide.
Hmm.
But I am perfectly happy with that term, and so are you.
Yeah.
So are you, meaning the people watching this. I've made an assumption that Seamus is going to be okay with it without asking him.
Fair.
But from now on, all the people watching this, you're all also okay with the term genocide, even though they were mostly the same ethnos. The most recent data indicates that there are 23,745 mass graves with the bodies of 1.3 million Cambodians who were executed.
Oh, that's crazy.
These numbers do not include those who died from exhaustion, starvation, and disease. Now we're going to get into a section I've called Western Denial. Now remember, even up to 1973, Sihanouk didn't see this Khmer Rouge thing coming. And Sihanouk was
Yeah.
plugged into it.
Right.
But some people did.
I mean,
Westerners were
Pol
banned.
Pot really, he was very much a behind the scenes kind of guy for a
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah.
He was, the quiet bookkeeper that nobody figured for a revolutionary, and then he
None of
just
the Khmer Rouge top
jumped in.
guys, they were all like
Yeah.
communist students in Paris.
Yeah.
They were all very bookish.
he
So
snuck
no
in
one
under the
told
radar.
Watch the bookish guys.
Yep.
Westerners were banned, so for years the sole source of information was Khmer Rouge press releases and the few refugees who managed to escape. That was the only source of information they had on what was going on in Cambodia. When these refugees told their stories to Western press, many left-wing academics, especially people who had been critics of the US, refused to believe them. Don't worry, I'm getting to it. One day after the Khmer Rouge took control, a UN official said, "What the Khmer Rouge are doing is pure genocide." So it wasn't as if people weren't aware of it at the time.
Yeah.
In November 1975, US Henry Kissinger, who was a US guy, you know that, but I have it written down in my script. US guy Henry Kissinger told the Thai foreign minister, "Tell the Cambodians that we will be friends to them. They are murderous thugs, but we won't let that stand in our way."
That is so fucking on par for him.
It's on par for American foreign policy.
Yeah, it's like, oh, wait a minute. They're doing good things for their people and giving them health care and expanding, their freedoms and such. Oh, fucking bastard socialists must not. Wait. They're killing other people?
Yeah.
We might be able to work with this guy.
Yeah. So why would seemingly sensible political analysts such as Gareth Porter, George Hildebrand, who together wrote a book claiming that the death tolls were wildly exaggerated, Laura Summers, Ed S. Herman, I have one of Ed Herman's books, Malcolm Caldwell, and most famously,
Noam Chomsky.
Noam Chomsky, why would they deny this genocide was happening, right? Side note on Malcolm Caldwell, who was a Marxist writer and a lecturer at the School of Oriental African Studies at the University of London. He had written extensively in defence of the Khmer Rouge. In December 1978, he was part of the first group of Westerners invited to tour Cambodia
Yep.
since the Khmer Rouge took over. He managed to secure a private audience with Pol Pot. No one knows what was said at this meeting, but a few hours later, Caldwell was shot dead by a Cambodian gunman. The Observer reported that there must have been some kind of in-house involvement as the guests were guarded, but the MI6 was more direct in determining that Pol Pot had ordered his death. Pol Pot himself claimed that one of the others in the party was a CIA agent who murdered Caldwell, which is self-evidently ridiculous.
It wasn't there a claim that he actually stumbled across like the actual shit that went down?
Yeah, that's what his brother. That's what Caldwell's
Yeah.
brother said, but there's no evidence
Right.
for that.
That's what it was. His brother said that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no evidence for that.
Yeah.
And Pol Pot's explanation is patently ridiculous, but he must have said something to annoy him.
Yeah.
Anyway, side note ends. Chomsky stated that the reports of the genocide were a seriously distorted version of the evidence available, emphasizing alleged Khmer Rouge atrocities and downplaying or ignoring the crucial US role, direct and indirect, in the torment that Cambodia has suffered. Now, that's half right.
Hmm.
The evidence available was nothing
Sure.
at that time. And everybody was ignoring the crucial US role, direct and indirect, in the torment that Cambodia had suffered. But the rest of it is a little bit tasty. Chomsky, he also attacked the direct witness testimony of many refugees as a product of their imagination, or that because they were frightened and defenseless, they naturally tend to report what they believe their interlocutors wish to hear. Chomsky had never denied that killings had taken place, just that the numbers were exaggerated, and this turned out to be not true.
I think this is like a reflex leftist thing too. You know what I mean?
Well,
There's a tendency that if you're saying that imperialism is what it is, and you perceive Pol Pot as an ally in a sense, that a lot of leftists will defend them, reflexively regardless.
Yeah, I mentioned that.
It's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate.
I put that down as another possible reason for this, the reflexive leftist thing.
Yeah,
a lot of the stuff Chomsky took shit for was not justified because he didn't say a bunch of the stuff. Like, he didn't deny the genocide or anything. He just thought the killings were exaggerated, which they weren't. If anything, they were exaggerated down.
shitting on eyewitnesses and stuff.
I'm going to take up with that now.
Okay.
For one thing, refugees with horrific stories of abuse in the lands of America's enemies was and remains an established CIA tactic to justify foreign interventions.
That's fair. Yeah.
The most famous example of this was probably the testimony of a 15-year-old Kuwaiti girl called Naira, who in 1990 told the United States Congressional Human Rights Caucus that she had seen Iraqi troops throwing babies out of incubators. This testimony was crucial to swaying the congressional vote to invade Iraq. It later transpired that she was the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador, lied about everything, and was trained by the CIA how to do this. Similar fears were swirling around the testimony of Cambodian refugees. For another thing, the stories coming out of Cambodia were often far-fetched and sounded like anti-Khmer propaganda. For the same reason, many sensible people refused to believe that the Nazis, the most cultured and sophisticated people in the world, could round people up and murder them by the million for no good reason. A lot of people didn't.
And there was a lot of anti-Semitism with that too, right? Because there was already a lot of, there was a lot of, well, we're okay with some of that anyways, wink, wink, right?
That's true. But also, I could understand anybody who didn't believe the Holocaust when they were told about it first. It's absolutely ludicrous, very far-fetched.
Well, and you're on record for, agreeing with the people that says it doesn't exist now today, so,
No, but if you were 1940 something and you heard these stories coming, you'd be like, no, that's just anti-German propaganda.
Yeah.
It's a ludicrous scenario. It's a ridiculous thing to say. They're rounding up Jews and killing them in gas camps. Yeah, fuck off, But they were. In 1977, at a government hearing, Gareth Porter said, "I cannot accept the premise that 1 million people have been murdered systematically or that the government of Cambodia is systematically slaughtering its people." Right? It just sounded ridiculous to him. And as it turned out, 1 million was a way underestimate. But this guy thought it was just ridiculous. And he said it out loud. And that's another thing that went into this. Third, there was a feeling among left-wing academics, especially critics of US actions in Vietnam, that a brutal regime in Cambodia would in some way validate the US efforts to destroy the Khmer Rouge to the point that everyone would forget it was the US that caused the conditions which created the Khmer Rouge in the first place. Fourth, many socialist scholars in academia had bought into the idea that the Khmer Rouge were rescuing Cambodia from colonialism, capitalism, and US imperialism, which is true enough, added to the left-wing glamour of the creation of a socialist agrarian utopia managed and run entirely by peasant farmers. Which it was, because nobody was allowed not be a peasant. As soon as you put your head above the parapet and start speaking a different language, you were shot dead.
Yeah.
Right? So I can see why anybody would go for that. But Chomsky was wrong. We have to acknowledge that. He was wrong.
He's wrong about a few things in his life.
But the one everybody bothers about is the Cambodian genocide.
Yeah.
And I think because of the reasons I've stated, I think they did him dirty on that.
Well, recent events, I think that's kind of bumped down on the list of things.
His association with Epstein, I have no explanation for that. That's unforgivable. I have no intention. But the Cambodia stuff, everything I've told you, I think makes sense as to why he would believe that untrue thing.
Chris Hedges destroyed him. He really just broke it down and especially Chomsky's wife's defense of it and stuff. It's just it's so terrible.
The problem
it makes it worse. Yeah. It just makes it worse as all.
She said she basically painted him as friends with him.
Yeah, if you're as much as he is in there, it fucking sure as hell does look like it.
Yes,
because he debated a lot of shit with him that was straight up disgusting, and it's
advised him.
Yeah,
yeah.
Oh my god, it's just fucking terrible.
The thing about Chomsky,
fuck that guy.
The only defense you could possibly have is that he didn't know about the child abuse.
Oh, but he did. He absolutely fucking did.
I'm not saying he did or didn't. I'm saying that's his only possible defense.
But I don't think you can because of the time of those emails. It was already public knowledge that he had been charged. He had already been stopped. You know what I mean? And a guy that is so tuned into everything that's going on as Chomsky, there's no doubt he didn't know.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Well, there was a second half to that sentence.
What?
The only defense he could possibly have would be that he didn't know about the sex traffic and so on. But I find that difficult to accept from a guy who's supposed to know things.
Right. Well, you say that now, Barry.
I do. Chomsky is celebrated internationally for being a man who knows what's going on behind the scenes. Yep. And I find it very difficult to accept he didn't know any of that.
Yeah.
But the Cambodia thing was blown out of proportion in my view.
Yep. That whole manufacturing consent just has a different...
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope they don't... Yeah, that's a great book, but yeah. It was disappointing, but I'm not going to... No, that was sick.
Yep.
In 1976, moving on from the Chomsky part of the show, the reason I wanted to do this Cambodia thing was because of the Chomsky revelations, and I called it informally to Seamus 2 weeks ago. I called it the Chomsky Memorial episode. And we probably called that the subtitle. In 1976, there was a general election where every seat was won by the National United Front of Kampuchea.
There we go again.
The political party set up by Sihanouk while he was in exile in Beijing in 1970. However, it was clear to everyone that Sihanouk had not only lost control, but no longer had anything at all to do with the Khmer Rouge. This was an alliance of him and the Khmer Rouge and some other people, but he had nothing to do with it anymore. Throughout the late 1970s, the Khmer Rouge had been making cross-border attacks into Vietnam for unclear reasons, but the best bet is it was a purely racist extension of the Cambodian genocide of Vietnamese citizens of Cambodia. For instance, in April 1978, Cambodia killed 3,000 people in a Vietnamese town called Ba Chuk. Towards the end of 1978, Vietnam discovered that Cambodia was mobilizing their army for a full-scale invasion of Vietnam. Now, 3 days after Malcolm Caldwell was murdered, if you remember our side note, Vietnam invaded Cambodia first. They put together a coalition of Cambodian dissidents they could support, appropriately enough called Kampuchean United Front for National Salvation, or the Salvation Front. They managed to take over the country in 2 weeks, renaming it the People's Republic of Kampuchea and sending the Khmer Rouge running across the Thai border and conducting a war of insurgency for the next 10 years. So I guess the Khmer Rouge weren't so tough when the guys they were shooting at also had guns.
Right.
They were kind of useless. In addition to the Khmer Rouge insurgency, the Khmer Rouge are now out of power and there's an insurgency on the border. In addition to the Khmer Rouge insurgency on Cambodia's borders, China invaded Vietnam in early 1979 to convince them to vacate Cambodia. Unfortunately for China, the Vietnamese had dealt with them before and knew exactly how to handle themselves. The Chinese gave up after a month of getting nowhere, and the Vietnamese stayed in Cambodia, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
The efforts to rebuild... Now, Vietnam took Cambodia, they occupied it, specifically to stop them attacking them. And when they got in there, they discovered the place was a fucking mess. And they didn't know what to do. But they didn't feel like... There was almost like an ethical consideration that they didn't feel like leaving Cambodia on their own, you know? Okay. The efforts to rebuild Cambodia begun. Everything was difficult and complicated because all of the apparatus and all of the people needed to rebuild the country had been eliminated by the Khmer Rouge. The good news is the genocide stopped immediately. That afternoon, the killings stopped. So thank you, Vietnam. Buddhism was restored and temples were reopened. The Vietnamese occupation government then engaged in a massive propaganda campaign to convince Cambodians to help in the project of rebuilding their country. Cambodians were, and to be honest, a lot of what the Vietnamese did here, in my view, is justifiable.
Okay.
Cambodians were understandably terrified that the Khmer Rouge could return, and the occupation government fed those fears by setting up genocide museums and putting mountains of skulls on display, which we saw earlier, where they remain today. They also set up a day of remembrance. A lot of those things were set up by the Vietnamese occupation government to scare the population into supporting the Vietnamese occupation, right?
You'll have that, I guess.
Well, they didn't have to lie or anything. They just said, yeah. The Vietnamese also set up a day of remembrance, which ostensibly was a day to remember the victims of the genocide, but turned into a day of hating on the Khmer Rouge, with popular slogans such as, "We must absolutely prevent the return of the former Black Darkness," chanted on the day.
Oh, geez.
It should probably be pointed out that a massive communist propaganda campaign aimed at destabilizing any popular support for the Khmer Rouge did not have much work to do. As Sihanouk was not enamored of a Vietnamese occupation no more than he was enamored of a Khmer Rouge, he again found himself allied with the Khmer Rouge as a sort of government in exile. Now, everyone knew at this point that the Khmer Rouge were genocidal bastards, and Sihanouk really felt himself so out of options that he kind of allied himself with these guys as a sort of government in exile with his new political party, National United Front for an Independent, Neutral, Peaceful and Cooperative Cambodia. And believe me when I tell you that the acronym for that is just as awkward. And they joined with the humiliated Khmer Rouge to form the coalition government of Democratic Kampuchea, which had no purchase in actual Cambodia at all. For geopolitical reasons rather than logic, the UN continued to recognize the coalition government as the legitimate government of Cambodia rather than the Vietnamese occupation government. This doesn't make any sense to me, but that's what they did. Vietnam was not expecting the UN to side with the Khmer Rouge, what should have been a fairly simple calculation, and found themselves not just reconstructing an entire country with zero resources, but thanks to the UN, despite conducting one of the very few occupations in history that was arguably morally justified, they were now also entrenched in an international diplomatic nightmare. Let's not forget the civil war that they had no real interest in whatsoever, because given that whoever won would end up in control of Cambodia and the Vietnamese would go home. So the Vietnamese didn't really care, but they found themselves in this very difficult position. This war was permanently raging on their borders and endlessly funded by China. In the 1981 general election, 117 seats out of 117 seats went to the Kampuchean People's Revolutionary Party, the only party to contest the election. What does that tell you?
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, okay. All candidates were pre-approved by the Salvation Front, and although efforts were made to devolve the government, there were not enough well-educated, this is a terrible thing to say, but it's true, there were not enough well-educated Cambodians left to operate a functional civil service because he shot anybody who had a degree. The entire government, therefore, was pretty much operated by proxy from Hanoi because they had no choice. While the US openly admitted supporting the anti-Vietnam forces aligned with Sihanouk, they always denied giving any kind of support to the insurgency of the Khmer Rouge. However, a document declassified in 2012 alleges that a John Kerry counsel, a lawyer, I guess, named Jonathan Weiner, claimed that the US had been funding the Khmer Rouge to the tune of $86 million between 1980 and 1986. John Pilger claimed that the US was funneling aid to the Khmer Rouge through Thailand and Singapore to cover their tracks.
Oh my.
A senior SAS officer, SAS meaning British Special Services, like a Green Berets, but English, right?
Right.
A senior SAS officer also claimed that they were working with the Yanks and that we trained the Khmer Rouge in a lot of technical stuff. As the 80s wore on, more and more countries turned on Vietnam, halting aid and imposing sanctions until eventually they agreed to pull their troops out. In 1989, Vietnam had agreed to a full withdrawal, mostly because they'd pretty much dealt with the Khmer Rouge threat by then, and they'd set up the rump of what they thought might be a functional government. So they kind of invaded specifically to have a place they could work with. They rigged one election because it would have been unworkable otherwise, and then they set up kind of a rump of a government and left. They changed their name when the Vietnamese left. The rump government changed their name from the People's Republic of Kampuchea to the State of Cambodia. Buddhism was reestablished as a state religion, and the right to privately own assets was restored. So, in other words, the Vietnamese did nothing at all to prevent. They were, as long as Cambodia wasn't acting the bastard, they were all right with it. In 1988, a joint resolution of Congress, Public Law 100-05, put the nail in the coffin of any attempt to support the Khmer Rouge. Section 4 states that the United States must remain vigilant to ensure that genocide is never tolerated or forgotten anywhere in the world, and that those responsible for such heinous crimes should be held accountable under international law as prescribed by the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. So thankfully that's never been an issue since.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Americans are always the first on the scene if there's a genocide.
Right.
Now, there, that's Reagan, and that's Sihanouk. That's our old friend, our old good-looking friend, remember?
Yeah.
That's Sihanouk. That's the same guy, friends with Reagan. He will shake anybody's hand.
Yeah, jeez.
Yep. Our old friend Sihanouk, the once and future king. That's the wrong paragraph. In 1991, the various Cambodian factions signed the Paris Agreement as a path to peaceful governance, thus ending the civil war. Thank fuck, right?
Yep.
Part of the agreement mandated that Cambodia be managed by the United Nations Transitional Authority in Cambodia, UNTAC, which would manage the government and deploy peacekeeping troops. This is the first time the UN had ever taken over a government. It's not really what they do, but they agreed to. And it's just as well they did because, as I said, there wasn't enough smart people left to run the place. UN Security Council Resolution 745 stated that UNTAC shall be established under its authority for a period not to exceed 18 months, decides that it is vital that elections be held in Cambodia by May 1992 at the latest, requests the Secretary-General to employ UNTAC as rapidly as possible to implement above decision. Now, this is Operation UNO when you take over a country as an occupation or whatever. Operation UNO, as I keep saying, is hold elections. And the UN were kind enough to put that into their order. Our main job here is to hold elections by May 1992 at the latest. Now, our old friend Sihanouk, the once and future king, returned to Phnom Penh in triumph as the head of the Supreme National Council of Cambodia, which was set up by the UN to act as a national Cambodian administrative body while they were figuring out the details on the ground. Some representatives of the Khmer Rouge turned up in Phnom Penh also, apparently to contest any future elections. Crowds lined the street to throw things at them. As soon as their man on the ground, Khieu Sampan, entered his office, he was attacked by an angry mob who tried to hang him from the ceiling. He managed to escape out a window and smuggled himself to the airport and thereafter to Beijing. The Wikipedia page for the Cambodian-Vietnamese War has this delightful sentence. With the departure of Khieu Sampan, the Khmer Rouge's participation in the election seemed doubtful.
Alrighty then.
They tried to hang him off the ceiling. Seemed doubtful.
Yeah.
UNTAC's role was not just to take over the day-to-day running of the civil service institutions and maintain law and order, but to disarm and stand down the various armed factions inside Cambodia, do extensive mine-sweeping operations, relocate hundreds of thousands of refugees, rebuild the entire infrastructure, and hold war crimes tribunals for the Khmer Rouge leaders. In 1993, there was a general election in Cambodia. Now, people of the jib, what do we like about that photo?
It's mixed.
Yes,
it's not just one color.
There's more than one color.
Yeah.
That's a very good sign. In 1993, there was a general election in Cambodia. The results were a narrow victory. By the way, narrow victories are the best. There was a narrow victory for Sihanouk's party and the party who were running the country since 1979. UN Security Council 840 said that the UN, quote, endorses the results of the election, which has been certified free and fair by the United Nations, with one of the paragraphs praising, quote, the leadership and continuing role of His Royal Highness Prince Norodom Sihanouk, President of the Supreme National Council, in bringing about national reconciliation and restoring peace in Cambodia. So we can put us back up again now. Oh, you love to see it, a colourful electoral map. It was decided that Sihanouk would be head of state in a coalition government, and in September of that year, 1993, Sihanouk was again the king of Cambodia.
Oh.
There were years of the usual unsettled political goings-on, but thankfully no major instances of no violent wars or anything. Now Cambodians resolve their differences by screaming at each other across the parliament floor like the rest of us. In 1998, Pol Pot died of a heart attack, surrounded by friends and family.
Oh, that guy.
Some of his final words were, everything I did for my country. And to say that millions died is too much.
Okay.
And that the babies, the young ones, I did not order them to be killed.
Sure.
That's what he said. So I guess he got an attack of the oh shits towards the end. In 2004...
Well, that's usually what happens afterwards, too. So.
Hey! He's here all week, folks. Seamus. Tip your waitress. In In 2004, after ensuring that a coalition government could go on without him, Sihanouk abdicated in favor of his son Norodom Sihamoni, who is currently the king of Cambodia.
Okay.
In 2007, the war crimes tribunals finally kicked off, with multiple Khmer Rouge commanders sentenced to life in prison, including our friend who escaped out the window, Khieu Sampan, that's him there. In 2021, that is him in 2021, which is why they're all wearing masks. If you remember 2021, it was a delightful time in Earth's history. In 2021, Sampan filed an appeal, but it was denied on the basis of his definite and proven involvement in genocide, crimes against humanity, and, as the judge said, grave breaches of the Geneva Convention. In 2009, Sihanouk, still in 2009, one guy was a giant, posted that he would have to stop publishing on his blog as he was getting too old. From this year, he spent most of his time in Beijing for medical reasons. In 2012, he died. He holds the Guinness World Record for the most state roles held by a royal. In chronological order, Sihanouk served as a king, a prime minister, a chief of state, a regent, a head of the government in exile, a president in exile, a head of the government in exile, a president of the Supreme National Council, the head of the state again, and finally, the king. And that is the end of my Cambodia episode and my attempted examination of the Chomsky factor. And what do you think of that, Seamus?
It's good shit.
Okay.
Good shit.
So this week in the news, or what's new, as we're calling it apparently. The new phrase we had for this section is what's new. And this section, we put the words FBI and CIA into Google. We hit the news tab and see what crazy madness came up. In case you thought this is all ancient shit, I promise you they did some weird shit this week. And Seamus will now tell us that weird shit connected with the FBI.
So actually, most of it is Kash Patel.
Kash Patel.
Yep. So he got into some trouble. Even Trump wasn't happy with him going to the Winter Olympics game and celebrating like a douchebag in the locker room with the hockey team.
I saw that.
Yeah. So it seems like every time he gets a little bit of heat, he lashes out and he fires people.
Oh.
So he fired like about 10 people. He was claiming that they, had said stuff against Trump or some bullshit. But it turned out that these people were actually also assisted the CIA and other people in intelligence gathering against Iran. So good timing.
There we go.
Good timing.
Yeah.
Also, one thing we're finding about the Epstein files is how much the FBI was okay with suppressing things and just not investigating it. The most recent is that they met 4 times with one of Trump's victims from the time she was age 13.
Oh.
There's also that Comey, as an FBI director, that got a little bit of trouble for saying some stuff about Trump. Yeah. She helped suppress the investigation, as in his sister, I believe, helped suppress the investigation in New Mexico. And then, let's see, what's our next to last one here? Kash Patel halted the probe into Renee Good's killing.
Okay.
And this whole idea is that he was upset because they kept referring to her as a victim.
Oh, what would you call her?
Yeah. He apparently just wanted her to be considered a terrorist, so he doesn't want to. Yeah. Kind of unrelated, but I think something worth talking about super quick is Alabama is set to execute. By the time we air this, the Thursday before this airs, a man by the name of Charles Sonny Burton, who's 75, is going to be executed in Alabama for felony murder. As in, he wasn't the one that actually committed the act of murder, but he just happened to be present.
Is that what felony murder means?
Yep.
Okay.
So we'll see whether or not his execution is halted or not. It's about
he's going to be executed for the crime of not killing someone.
Yeah, I mean, he was involved, and he was the alleged ringleader in this burglary, robbery that went awry. Apparently, after they got all the money, he goes out to the car, and one of the guys that was with him knocked down a customer and then shot him and killed him.
Okay.
So he wasn't even in the building when this happened. So
you could get him for something.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's obviously, arrested in jail for all those things, but I don't know if he necessarily needs to be executed for, You know what I mean?
Is he black?
Barry, it's really weird that you would guess that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So
Get
that's
it
all
for,
I got this week.
get it for aggravated manslaughter. That's about it.
Yeah, something. I mean, I understand,
Yeah.
but hey, whatever. So we'll see if he gets to live or not. So
Yeah.
we'll know by the. If you're in the chat, you'll know, or you'll tell me. So
Yeah.
but that's all I got.
Okay. I'm going to talk about the CIA, and as you would expect, the wires are abuzz with Iran news.
Mm.
Iran, according to Sky.com, Iran made a mistake targeting civilians in the Middle East. Iran has made a big,
Really?
I don't think so. Iran has made a big mistake by not just attacking U.S. bases and assets in the Gulf state, but by targeting civilians in the region. He went after you. I think Iran is playing an absolute blinder.
Yeah.
Yeah, by targeting a lot of U.S. assets and in Qatar, and that's the way to do it, man. That is the way to do it.
Yeah.
And Tel Aviv, and keeping to military targets as much as they can.
Right.
Yeah, that's the way to do
the
it.
problem is, Israel tends to put a lot of their military targets inside of civilian areas.
Yes, famously, the Mossad headquarters is in the middle of a residential area in Tel Aviv. The IDF headquarters is in a thing
It's
called
like they're hiding behind human shields.
what's it called, the Kuria or something complex, which is in the middle of a residential area in Tel Aviv. Well, if Hamas did it, it would be human shields talk. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
The next one is the CIA planning to arm Kurdish forces to spark an uprising in Iran? It wouldn't.
The poor Kurds.
Yeah,
They're going to get fucked again.
they are, but they're not going to spot it coming.
Yeah.
The United States is in talk with opposition Kurd forces in a bid to arm them and foment an uprising in Iran. Because that never goes wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Trump's administration is actively discussing with opposition Kurd groups, according to CNN. So,
Yeah.
and the last one is CIA agents successfully executed a plan for regime change in Iran in 1953, but Trump doesn't have one. And this is
Shocker.
an episode called The Conversation. If you saw our episode called Operation Ajax, one of the first episodes we did, you will know all about the regime change in Iran in 1953. And if you say anyone doing any kind of a discussion about what's happening in Iran now who doesn't know anything about that, just ignore them, because that's the context you need to understand what's going on.
Yeah, pretty much.
But the conversation says that the magazine, The Conversation, says that Trump has no plan at all. He has no exit strategy. He doesn't seem to have any plan, anything. All he said is he wants regime change, but has articulated no strategy for achieving it.
Yeah, they thought taking out Khomeini was going to be the end all. Which is,
the thing about the Islamists in Iran, the thing about is the guys at the top are kind of all right.
Yeah.
As these things go, like he's not good, but
sure.
The real bloodthirsty maniacs tend to be in the middle level.
Yeah, but he also doesn't understand what he did by doing that and why all the embassies are getting attacked. It would be like Iran blowing up Vatican City and taking out the Pope. There's just there is no geopolitical understanding to any of these motherfuckers. Yeah. It's worse, but it's almost as bad as how Bush handled Iraq. Remember whenever they said they went in and they decided, okay, all the Ba'ath Party needs to go without having any understanding of how that worked and why it's just fucking these motherfuckers.
Speaking of Ayatollahs, I remember one part during the Iraq invasion, during the insurgency, there was this guy called Muqtada al-Sadr, and he had his own militia called the Baghdadi Army or something in Baghdad, and he had a good idea. His idea was he would shoot some Americans, run off into a mosque in Baghdad, sit there, wait for the Americans to bomb the mosque, and then that would create a jihad, a holy war. It's not a bad plan. So this was the plan. Someone told the Ayatollah Sistani was, I guess, also, by the way, Muqtada al-Sadr was Shia.
Okay.
Without, just to state the obvious for people, Iraq was a Sunni country.
Right.
So Muqtada al-Sadr and his gang were all Shia militants, and they were in this mosque waiting for the Americans to blow it up. Someone told Ayatollah Sistani, who was having heart surgery in London at the time, he leaves the hospital with the thing on him. Somebody wheelchairs him out to an airplane, which goes directly, he's an old man now, he goes directly to Baghdad, screws the airplane down into the airport because he can't land in directly into Baghdad because the forces have anti-aircraft missiles. He screws in from the top, comes out, somebody wheelchairs him out. Somebody wheels him into the mosque. All you can hear is a bit of shouting, right, from the Ayatollah Sistani. Muqtada al-Sadr and all his men come out like this and surrender.
Wow.
So sometimes the Ayatollahs they're kind of all right. They're kind of holding the thing
Yeah.
together. They want to run the country like an Islamic theocracy, right? Which is not good.
Yeah, yeah,
But
absolutely.
also, like, you could replace him with someone a lot worse. If
No.
you're taking somebody at the mid level of the army, those guys are going to be bloodthirsty maniacs in the
Yep.
way that the Ayatollah isn't, because the Ayatollah will at his base will be governed by the Quran, and the Quran makes it very clear: don't be going around killing people. You know.
Yep,
So
that's him taking him out was the worst fucking thing they could have done.
yeah, they think it's a
So
victory.
stupid. Yeah, I know. Trust
Yeah,
me, I know.
yeah. They want to put Reza Pahlavi back in charge. I wouldn't put
Yeah.
that man in charge of a fucking pigeon.
No.
I wouldn't put him in charge of a pigeon, let
Yeah,
alone a
it's just,
country.
go look at the videos that the White House is putting out.
Yeah.
It's just it's beyond parody. It's
Mm.
like they hired the Onion to
Yes,
do
I saw that. Yeah.
state government shit. It's just
Well,
so
Pahlavi,
yeah.
this guy Pahlavi's dad, who was also called Reza Pahlavi, he was the
Mhm.
Shah of Iran, and he
Right.
was so bad that the people of his country, it made the Ayatollah Islamic theocracy seem like a good idea. Now think about that,
Yeah.
because Iranians at the time were not stupid; they were educated and basically secular, right?
Yeah.
They were all Muslims, but they weren't like theocracy Muslims; they
Right.
were like regular Muslims, and these people thought that the Islamic theocracy would rescue them. And that's how bad Pahlavi Shah ran that country. So just think on that. So the next time you hear anybody saying, oh, the Islamic theocracy is terrible and they do this to women and do that, well, fine, fine. But look at what happened. The Iranians voted for that. There was a referendum in 1983, where a free and fair referendum that was not rigged, saying, do you want this country to be run by the Ayatollah? And the referendum was a landslide victory for the Ayatollah because they were so fucking sick of
Yeah.
the Shah and his
Yeah.
bullshit.
That's okay. Bill Maher and John Stewart both think it was a good idea to kill him, so it's all matters.
I don't like that. It just annoys me. And there's people on Twitter now saying all this and that. They've no understanding of the history of it.
No.
None.
No.
Even Iranians are saying these things, and Iranians don't seem to have an understanding of their own history.
Well, there's that whole diaspora that is really
That is
fucked
true.
up.
Just
There-
don't listen to anything.
Yeah,
they
there are
say.
some really fucked up people. I'll just say that.
And
So.
we saw. Speaking of what we saw, you saw the thing with Ted Cruz.
Mhm.
Absolutely mad,
Yeah,
madness. And if you haven't seen the Ted Cruz quote, I'm not going to ruin it for you, but it's about Cuba.
yeah.
So go look it up. And it's not. I thought
just
it was.
go look on his. Just look on
It's
Solo
on my
One.
Twitter. It's on my Twitter.
It's-
Solly Winnie.
yeah.
Solly Winnie everywhere all at once.
Yeah.
And I'll show you my. Have you seen my business card?
Oh no.
I'll show you my business card. Right
Nice.
person, writer, philosopher, and I don't know if you can see the text there because it's purple on black, but it says Solo Winnie everywhere all at once.
Nice.
So if you will find me on any social media site you're on by typing Solo Winnie into the thing, and I'm on there. And if you go into the Twitter, you'll see the quote that Ted Cruz gave, and it's at first it was amusing, and the more I thought about it, the angrier I got.
Yeah.
It's angering, and I don't get angry.
He's just ridiculous.
Oh, I have something else here I wanted to show you. This is Cambodian money.
Oh, nice.
I found it in a book. It's 9,000 like reals, I guess. What do they call it? Reals, yeah. 9,000 reals, which is about $2. Cambodia, and I'll see if I can find the interesting thing I wanted to see.
Is the higher money jigs?
Maybe you can't see it there, but it should
Yeah.
say Cambodge. Do you see Cambodge? Yeah, that's the French for Cambodia, Cambodge.
Nice.
That's it. And that is me done. And I guess that's us, is it?
Yep. So we'll see everybody in 2 weeks. Maybe
for joining us.
Well, it'll be something. Who knows?
Yeah,
Let's
and
watch.
I'm currently working on another Iran script because of the Iran invasion. We left Iran last in 1953, and I'm hoping to do a 1953 to last night episode. That's what I'm currently hoping for. I guarantee nothing.
Fair. Alrighty, folks. See you in
Thank
2
you,
weeks. Thanks
Good
again.
luck. Bye.
Bye.